now, Cindy Bricado, Dennis Bounds, and meteorologist Dave Dahl. This is Eyewitness News at 5.
Good afternoon, everyone. A good portion of downtown Philadelphia was enveloped in fire for part of the afternoon.
The 9-alarm fire broke out this afternoon in an 8-story building that was undergoing renovation. It quickly involved the entire building and began spreading to 4 other buildings in the downtown's main business district. The fire also spread to the recently opened Gallery 1 shopping mall. Burning chunks of a building were seen falling to the street, and several parked cars caught fire. Thousands of shoppers and workers have been evacuated. There have been no reports of serious injuries except for one firefighter who suffered minor injuries. Just a short time ago, we talked with the mayor's press secretary who was in her office just 4 blocks away when that fire broke out.
I can smell smoke in my office now. As soon as I got outside to the northeast corner City Hall, the heat from when it was fully involved, this Harrison Court building, you could feel it 2 or 3 blocks away. It's a very hot fire, and I think probably the fact that the winds were not bad is the reason why we don't really have a real disaster on our hands.
It is still going, but the fire in downtown Philadelphia is now under control. Cindy.
Killer tornadoes have struck in the southern United States. The city of Montgomery, Alabama was hit the worst. 7 people were killed when a string of storms and tornadoes moved through the area. 4 of those people were killed when high winds overturned a pair of tractor rigs, causing a collision among several cars. More than a dozen others were hurt in that accident. At least a dozen homes were destroyed and many more were damaged as the tornado ripped a 5-mile path of destruction across the city. National Weather Service officials say the outbreak of tornadoes and severe thunderstorms will continue into tonight across the southeast. And then there were 2 moderate earthquakes that shook San Francisco this morning. The quakes registered 3.2 and 4.4 on the Richter scale. No damages or injuries were reported. Authorities say that the earthquakes were actually aftershocks from last week's damaging earthquake that caused $10 million in damage and injured 25 people. Now, back to some local stories we're following today.
John Clark Donahue made another appearance in court today. The artistic director of the Minneapolis Children's Theater emerged from the Hennepin County Government Center after having his case continued to later this month. Donahue was charged with child sexual abuse involving 3 young boys between 1981 and 1983. The case was continued in order to allow the complaints against Donahue to be amended. Donahue is charged with 6 counts of criminal sexual conduct. The attempted murder trial of Paul Stefani, which is expected to last 6 weeks, is nearly over. The defense made a highly unusual move this morning when Paul Stefani's attorneys informed the court they would rest their case without calling a single witness. The jury will now decide the case based solely on testimony from witnesses for the prosecution who appeared in the first 3 days of testimony. The jury gets that case tomorrow morning.
A consumer warning for you this afternoon. There are 8 out-of-state companies that are trying to sell oil leases over the telephone for land in Alaska. And the Minnesota Department of Commerce says those companies are not complying with state law. Michael Hatch, the Commissioner of Commerce, explained that those who end up buying the land are being misled by company brochures.
Right in there that the best way to make money on this is to go sell your rights immediately to an oil developer. And you'll make great profits, and they'll talk about the tremendous profits that you can make in there. But the fact of the matter is, if that's such a hot deal, why doesn't the company itself sell the lease directly to an oil developer?
Hatch suggests that you call the Department of Commerce if anyone does try to sell you some of those oil leases. The department keeps records on all companies legally doing business in the state, and those 8 companies have been ordered to stop selling in the state. So far, by the way, 3 have complied. A rule of the Democratic Party that's been criticized by some presidential candidates is now causing controversy right here at home in Minnesota.
Government specialist Lindsay Strand is in our newsroom right now with a report. Lindsay.
Well, Dennis and Cindy, the rule is referred to as the 20% threshold rule, and what it does is require candidates to win 20% of the caucus delegates before the delegates that are favoring that candidate can then go on and be elected to the national convention. Now, this morning, representatives of the Jackson and Hart campaigns in Minnesota announced a petition drive to have that rule abolished for future elections. The Jackson camp is going one step further in trying to change the rule this year. The first test will come at the 5th District Convention this weekend. The 5th District Rules Committee has already approved the change, but DFL State Chair Mary Monahan says that could risk Minnesota's 86 delegates being seated at the National Convention. Monahan says this year her hands are tied.
I'm not wed to that 20% rule. I would have no problem if it were not to be imposed at some future convention, but it is a rule that we have to deal with for this convention process. But the players are in place at this time. We have our delegates selected who will be participating at that level. To tell people, to make people aware that the Reverend Jackson has these concerns, I think is being done. We certainly can do that, but I don't know that we have the flexibility to, in any substantial way, do anything to alter.
Now, there are 6 unpledged delegates to be chosen at the state convention, and that may well be the point at which these folks, if they have an opportunity to express their viewpoint, will get a real opportunity to debate it. Dennis?
Thank you, Lindsay. Other news, Pope John Paul II wrapped up a busy first day after arriving in South Korea today. After being warmly greeted by South Korean officials, the Pope wasted little time in raising the issue of the separation of South Korea and Communist North Korea. The pontiff says he prays that North and South Korea will be reunited through dialogue, mutual trust, and brotherly love. The Pope was greeted by thousands of cheering South Koreans. That nation is soon to become Asia's second largest Roman Catholic country behind the Philippines. The Pope's 11-day trip includes stops in New Guinea, the Solomon Islands, and Thailand. Meanwhile, disturbances broke out at 2 South Korean universities today. Riot police used tear gas to break up the crowds who were calling for democratic reforms. The Pope is scheduled to appear at one of the schools where today's protests were held during his visit in South Korea. But we still have several more stories to bring you on today's Eyewitness News at 5.
Among them will be our focus report looking at a unique recreational camp in Wisconsin where the age of the campers has no boundaries. A group of University of Minnesota students were demonstrating on campus today to protest planned cuts to their studies.
We'll also talk live with University of Minnesota Athletic Director Paul Giel about the Gophers' much-awaited spring football game. And media commentator Michael Boyle previews the latest entry in the primetime network mini-series wars. It's all ahead at 5.